What's going on? It's the real Jonathan Smith show here on Indy's Sports Ticket, coming off of it's called a frustrating loss last night for the Indiana Pacers. Joined now by my guy, Matt Murphy. Matt, this is the first time I've had a guest on during the live stream. Hopefully this goes well. Hopefully it goes much better than how the Pacers looked last night. What's going on, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. It's a pleasure to be on, as always, and especially given the nature of the first time with the video guest. So happy to be on. Well, and definitely just not happy about how last night went, though. That's for sure. That was brutal.
Last night, brutal doesn't even do it justice. So when the clock, or not even when the clock hit zero, when the fourth quarter started, and it was pretty evident that the game was over. How are you feeling? I know we texted a little bit. You said that you weren't overly surprised at the result from last night. So why weren't you surprised? Kind of give me your overall thoughts on the game.
Yeah. So coming in, just flow wise, I saw, seeing what you saw Sunday, which was a Pacers team that looked really good and dominant on both ends. The flow of the Pacers season has been after a game like that. They're kind of due for a down game, and let alone they've just been really bad on the road in the playoffs. So I think they're 1-7 now on road games. So they've been a totally different team. The good news is they're really good at home. So they're just going to need to figure out how to win a game on the road at some point. And Game 7 is now their only opportunity to do so. So you just expected more fight. I think you expected more. They just got outworked in pretty much every category, and that it feels like something that you can control, right? Whether shots go in or not, something that I, as a coach, as I said for a long time, that's something that, it's shot goes in, shot doesn't, great, but your work ethic is in your control, and it felt like they just got beat at everything that was in their control last night, which is frustrating as a fan, no doubt.
It really was. I was really wrong about the Knicks going small. I thought that the Knicks going with 4 guards was going to be good for the Pacers, but it wasn't. Hartenstein just grabbed every rebound, made Miles Turner look really, really bad.
Yeah.
And just looking back on the game, that for me was the most frustrating aspect of the loss, because rebounding is something that, as you said, that's just an effort thing. Carlisle after the game was like, this is just an effort thing. Right. And so was that for you the most frustrating part about watching the game last night?
Yeah, first, I think to the naked eye and just box score readers, you look at Hartenstein getting 12 boards and think, oh, he dominated Miles Turner. And don't get me wrong, Miles Turner was really not great on the glass, but part of that had to do why he specifically was available for so many offensive rebounds was due to their strategy on Brunson. They doubled frequently and had a heavy help. And so a lot of the times Hartenstein is just free, right? We call it, in the industry, call it, he's running naked down the lane. Nobody's put a body on him. And it's a free board, right? And so we give him a lot of credit and where credit's due, but you have to keep in mind, part of that is on the coaches, the way they defend it. They don't really have anyone that can guard Brunson. They've given him so much attention. But the flip side is you give him all this attention and it's Hartenstein's free. So a lot of those boards, I think, half of them in my mind are just based on the scheme that you're defending with, because you're not really containing the ball well. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing was just that. And then half of it was just, they were lifeless. They were just lifeless throughout and not really talked about a ton. They also had 18 turnovers. Yeah. I think that's another thing. You look in the Knicks, they had 30 more shots. They shot 30 more shots than the Pacers. It's hard to win games when that's the case.
Yes, it is. I'm glad you brought up the turnovers, because that plays perfectly into about what I'm going to say next. I'm going to zag a little bit. Every sports talk thing I've listened to this morning has just crucified Halliburton. Mm-hmm. And look, Halliburton was bad last night, but I don't think it was entirely his fault. If we did blame pie, I think 30% of why he was bad is on him. Yeah. I think 40% is on the Knicks, and I thought that they defended him better this game than anyone has in the entire playoffs between the Bucks and the Knicks. After watching what they did last night, that is how I would play the Pacers for the rest of time. Yep. And the other 30%, I think, falls on Carlisle for not making adjustments, because Halliburton never brought the ball up the floor. And when he doesn't bring it up, they have to find a way to get it to him, right? And McBride is doing, all the ball denial stuff. And there was never anything drawn up to get like a backdoor cut. They didn't run Halliburton off of any screens. They didn't do anything to help him. And like they would come across the half court line, Nimhard or McConnell or whoever brought it up would spend the first 5 seconds of the shot clock slowing the Pacers down, trying to get Halliburton the basketball. And then when they couldn't, they'd run, some sort of screen and roll action to the opposite side of the floor. And so could Halliburton have been more proactive in trying to get the ball? Yes. But at the same time, I thought that the Knicks did a really good job of scheming, and I didn't think Carlisle did a very good job of adjusting to finding ways to get him the ball.
Agreed. No, that's well said, John. And there's going to be a lot of that. The crucifying the best player who's went for 30, earlier and was talking. He wasn't even talking that much trash. Everyone on social media is like, "Oh, he's such a front runner." Do you want it? No. I mean, he acts the same way that a lot of the other guys do in the NBA, which is when they're playing well, that they're feeling it, right? You're more ample to say things to get the crowd going. So that's part of why people look to him, and he's an easy target in this case. But I think the biggest thing with him, you look at his plus minus, he's minus 22. If you look at McBride guarded him basically the whole time, and that's an adjustment that Tibbs made that needs more credit, right? McBride just took him away and was playing denial for most of the game, was just keeping the ball out of his hands. And so I think Pacer fans get frustrated because they don't fully get that Tyrese is okay with going 5 for 9. I was more surprised at his lack of getting other people involved, if that makes sense. So people want him to just chuck shots. In my mind, if I'm him, I'm getting the ball and still attacking. If they take you away, that's fine. You're a great passer. You're one of the assist leader of the NBA, right? Yeah. So I think the assist number, more than anything, tells me that he just wasn't involved in the offense, right? To your point. Which is, and as a fan, I don't need him to shoot 25 shots if he's being completely taken away.
Agreed.
But you do need him to be involved in the offense, and part of him being involved is going to be creating for others. So, and the last thing is, it's hard. People compare Brunson and Halliburton. They're just two very different players. Brunson's the guy that has one of the highest usages in the NBA, and he took 35 shots. Halliburton took 9. You want to see a little bit more of that Brunson mentality in Halliburton in games like that, yes. But do you want him to force 35 shots up? Probably not, right? No. So, I think you're right to say that people are quick to judge him, and rightfully so. I mean, you get paid $280 million, right? That's kind of what your due is. Go ahead.
I thought that when he had the ball, I thought he was really good. Like I track paint touches for Halliburton because I think there's a correlation between when he gets into the paint, the offense of the Pacers is better, and he's better, right? Because it sets up the step back. It allows him to. He's a great finisher. Like he finishes around the rim really well. I wish it's something he would do more. And so I felt like when he got the ball, he attacked the rim and he did the things that the Pacers need him to do to be successful in offense. He just didn't touch the ball enough, and because he didn't touch the ball enough, all of a sudden, Nesmith and Nimhard are having to make decisions, and you look up and there's 18 turnovers.
Yep. No doubt. No, that's well said. So it's something that hopefully, Halliburton hasn't had any issue getting up and playing home games. So I'm confident he'll bounce back. But I do want him to see, going into next season, like being able to gauge, hey, like I should never completely disappear when my team is down big on the road, right? That's one where if you're the 1A guy, no matter if you're a pass first guy or not, right? You do need to be more involved in the offense. And again, part of that's on coaching, but part of that is just him too. I think he was really quick to just give the ball up in moments. But yeah, it was frustrating to watch them just completely. They just took him away completely.
They did. And to not be completely negative, I do want to highlight Pascal Siakam, who I thought was really good last night. He was -2 in the 33 minutes that he played. Yep. Which means in the 15 minutes he was off the floor, the Pacers were -28. And so he is not the issue. Like, I mean, he was really good when he was on the floor. He came out really aggressive in the fourth quarter to a point where I was like, I can't turn this off yet because they're down by 12 and we've got like 11 minutes left. So I thought he was good. Hopefully that continues because I know he's had some stretches as well where he just kind of disappears.
Yeah.
So He
I've
was
got
good.
a John. I've got a question. I've got a question for you. Actually,
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
flip the script a little bit.
All right, that works. That's fine. What's
Do
up?
you think Siakam? Do you think Siakam's worth a max next season?
So I did a whole thing after game 2 on how if he doesn't pick it up and become the offensive option that the Pacers need him to be, then no. I
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think he has the proper mentality to be the right pair with Halliburton. Because I think
agreed.
that for the Pacers with their rebuild, it's going to look really similar to Denver in terms of getting over the hump and competing for titles. Because I think the way that Halliburton wants to play is pretty similar to Jokic in terms of getting guys involved. And like even Jokic can have stretches where he just doesn't look at the basket, kind of like Halliburton can have. And during those stretches, you need a hyper aggressive, irrationally confident scorer like Jamal Murray is for Jokic
Yeah,
alongside Halliburton. And look, Siakam's a really good player, but I just don't think he has the proper scores mentality to get to be the guy to put alongside Halliburton for the long run. Also, the age thing, like he's
yeah.
31. You know, Halliburton's only 24, so I don't know if their timelines really match either. But at the same time, like if you're the Pacers and you're a smaller marketed team, like, who else are you going to get?
Yeah, no, it's true. So I think hopefully it's just a friendly deal that they give. I do think he would resign. I think it mutually beneficial for both parties, but
Yeah.
it's tough to have your top two not be able to do it on both ends, right? I think that showed last night is Pascal really struggles rebounding the ball, like, and he got the numbers wise, but like there's no if Miles is in no man's land off of a ball screen, there's nobody to go get
Yeah.
a board over Arkansas or compete right for a board against Arkansas. So I think that's the biggest glaring in the future for them too. Right, your two best players would then be two guys that really don't enjoy defending at all.
They do
So
not.
um, hard to win
Or
a playoff game when that's the case.
yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's also really hard to win playoff games, especially on the road. When role players don't show up, who's been worse in this series? Andrew Nimhard or Aaron Nesmith? Because I don't think either one's been very good.
It's that's tough. It's tough because of the weight of the one moment that Nimhard had. But yeah, I'll say they're about tied. I mean, Neesmith he needs to make open shots. He was one of the best percentage wise shooters in the regular season. He hasn't showed up in the playoffs. He hasn't made open shots. Um, and Nimhard's, I think, trying to take the pressure was on him last night when Tyrese didn't have the ball in his hands. It's like, well, he's kind of the two guy, ball handler wise, and he didn't really do that great either. So it's been that's kind of like asking who's the tallest midget. It's just I don't know.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, they've both been really bad. If Rick Carlisle puts Andrew Nimhard on Jalen Brunson in Game 6 or Game 7, I'm gonna lose it. Like I'm gonna go absolutely nuts. I thought it was interesting.
He gets cooked.
He did. I thought it was interesting when he pivoted to Ben Shepherd, right? Like the first possession, Brunson shakes him and it hits a three, and Carlisle's like, no more. But he went back to it later, and I made note of it. And I thought Ben Shepherd did a much better job in that second stretch. I think because he's 6'6" with a 6'8" wingspan, I would rather see him on Brunson than Andrew Nimhard.
Yeah, it feels like Rick in moments is pretty bullish on his rotations, pretty bullish on defensive assignments, and he is held on to the Nimhard's going to check Brunson for too long all series, and the adjustment to go to Nesmith was great. Kind of had to go back to it a little bit with the two fouls from Nesmith early, but yeah, I agree. Length has been the only thing that has seemed to somewhat work against Brunson, and Nimhard does not have that. So he got shifted. So did Nesmith. Nesmith touched Earth last night. That was Brunson was cooking last night. He really was. He was.
It was one of those nights where I didn't think it mattered who the Pacers put on him. He was just really good. Also, for the radio audience, we're doing this live streaming thing now, and I just think everybody can see Matt. I'm joined by my guy, Matt Murphy, former high school basketball coach, professional sports viewer, all that good stuff. So because he used to coach, if you were coaching the Pacers, would you show them the tape of this game? Or is this just a burn it, let's just move on kind of thing?
I would, but it wouldn't be for maybe reasons that people would think. Um, I think one of the biggest things again is just the effort side, right? I would show you just getting outworked by guys that want it more. I say a lot. Some guys want it more, and no one wanted it more in the Pacers locker room. Like nobody did. Which is strange because of the context of the game itself. I think 80% of teams that win Game 5 in a series win the series. So this is you can say one of the biggest games that they've had in a decade plus. Same with the Knicks, and the Knicks showed up like it was, and the Pacers didn't. So I think I would
Yeah.
show certain tape for them, just effort wise. Like, hey, we got outworked. Like you got to have pride in that. Um, and I think there may be a couple things you could work specifically with Tyrese on about like, hey, you just have to have the ball in your hands more, and these are a couple of things that you could have done instead of kind of disappearing. I think the only other thing would just be defensively. Like you have to put a body on a body. So in your rotations, like I think you show some clips of that, and like, hey, we really need to do a better job of if you're going to go double him 35 feet from the bucket, like you have to be able to rotate out of it. And part of rotating out of it is not just to a man; it's to a man and getting a body on somebody when a shot goes up.
Without a doubt. Last question, Matt, and I will let you go.
Okay.
You're a lifelong Pacers fan. Like
Yes, sir.
this dude just bleeds everything Indiana.
317.
Go Boilermakers.
Come on.
Because or as a lifelong Pacers fan, if the Pacers can't rally back and win the last 2 games, how do you feel about the season? How do you feel about the team going forward? What is just the overall like are you happy with what happened? Disappointed? Kind of what are the emotions of that?
I'm so glad that you're asking me this, giving me the floor to respond to this, because so many people I think get captive in the moment and they see a depleted Knicks team and say, and I've been victim of this. Is like how do you have performances like that? Like how are you down 3-2 to this team? Like DiVincenzo's their number 2 guy. That's crazy. You also have to keep in mind you started the season. DraftKings had you winning 35 games. 35 games. I mean, you're instead of playing in the second round, if you win 35 games, you're going to be a part of the draft lottery, right? You're going to be in the sweepstakes for nobody. I mean, because the draft this year kind of sucks. So yeah, I think just keeping in mind you're overachieving, just making it the playoffs, just making not the playing game. You're overachieving by you're the 6th seed. You beat a Bucks team that is still winning. I mean, injured or not, it's still a great. They performed well, beating them 4-2. You're playing the 2 seed Knicks. Like let's not. And you played them pretty well in the first 4 games, to where this series could have been 3-1 going into last night. So to any Pacer fan that's out there upset with this team, they're overachieving, and don't get caught up in the fact that they're playing a depleted Knicks team. They're lucky to be here, and no one expected them to be here. So, and lastly, just again, the biggest thing, they are playing the 2 seed. Like you're down 3-2 to the 2 seed, and you've won 2 games at home. You've lost 3 on the road. Like that, if you look at history, that's what history would expect. So, I'll say that. It's the 2 seed against the 6 seed.
I'm so glad you brought up history. I've got a whole thing on it later. When we look at the history of great players, 24-year-olds like Tyrese Halliburton don't win playoff series. They don't. Also, if there's any national media people out there listening, I just want you to rip Anthony Edwards and how bad he was last night as hard as you're ripping Tyrese Halliburton, please.
Keep that same energy.
I'm just saying. Dude, Matt, you've been great. First guest via live stream. It was great. I appreciate you. Hoops on Saturday, hopefully.
I'm gonna be in Texas.
Next
Saturday. Next
Saturday. Okay.
Well, hey, and next week I'll be on talking about the Game 7 that's gonna happen, because I've got the Pacers winning in Indy for sure.
I do too. And then who knows what can happen in a Game 7.
Who knows?
Matt, thank you.
Pleasure as always.
Yep. That is my guy, Matt Murphy, the one and only, just one of the best guys that I know, really smart basketball guy as well. When we come back here in about 4 minutes, the Pacers were disappointingly bad. I laid out 5 things that they had to do yesterday in order for them to win Game 5. They didn't do like any of them. We're going to get into that when we come back here in about 4 minutes. Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Had an absolute blast with my guy, Matt Murphy, talking Pacers Game 5. Disappointing loss last night. Like, I'm not upset at the loss. It was just one of those things where it's like, I'm disappointed in the lack of efforts that the Pacers came out with. And look, they were really bad last night. I mean, there's no other way to really put it. And yesterday, at around this time, 11:20-ish, I went through 5 things the Pacers had to do to win last night. I said they had to finish possessions by rebounding. Halliburton had to play well in all 4 quarters. Siakam had to be consistent. Miles Turner had to rebound and defend the rim. And Aaron Nesmith had to continue to defend Jalen Brunson well. The Pacers only did one of those 4 things. Pascal Siakam, I thought he was consistent. I thought he was aggressive. He took 15 shots and took 7 foul shots. So he got to the line. He attacked the rim. He did what the Pacers brought him here to do, and that's score the basketball. In what was a really bad Game 5 for the Pacers, Pascal Siakam was really the only bright spot. And I mean, I appreciate his effort at the start of the 4th quarter. He comes out really aggressive. They cut the lead to 12 pretty quickly in the 4th quarter, and then the Knicks respond with a big run, and that was it. All right, and a 30-point loss last night. Pascal Siakam was a -2. He played 33 minutes, which means that in the 15 minutes he wasn't on the floor, Indiana got outscored by 28 points. Pascal Siakam was not the issue last night. Now, my guy, Tyrese Halliburton, is going to be a major topic here, right? And I didn't think that Halliburton, I don't think Halliburton's entirely at fault for how bad he was last night. Okay, the big issue, though, that people are going to look at and examine is the fact that Tyrese Halliburton didn't show up last night. And when the best player on your team doesn't show up, it doesn't matter how good or bad everyone else is. It doesn't, because, look, if Jalen Brunson hadn't played well for the Knicks last night, the Knicks wouldn't have won that game, right? Like, your best player has to show up, and I'm really torn on what to say about Tyrese Halliburton, because he was terrible in the Pacers' biggest game of the year, right? He went full Casper mode, right? In 34 minutes, he only took 9 shots. He hit 5 of them, and he scored 13 points. And as we all know, that just isn't enough from a player who's supposed to be a superstar. But at the same time, I don't think this is entirely his fault. I don't think his bad performance is entirely on him. Tyrese Halliburton didn't touch the ball enough. He rarely brought the ball up the floor. That was by design. He inbounded the ball a good bit in the first half. They went away from that in the second half. And with Miles McBride pressuring him full court, they opted to have Andrew Nembhard or TJ McConnell bring the ball up the floor, which is fine. Those are 2 very capable ball handlers, but the ball has to get back to Tyrese Halliburton at some point during the possession, and it rarely did. When it did, I thought that Halliburton played well. Right? The Knicks, having whoever defended Tyrese Halliburton, usually Deuce McBride, they denied Halliburton the ball. Right? And that led to 2 things that really caused issues for the Pacers offense. One, the pace slowed down in the half court for the Pacers, because instead of starting the offense with, 20 seconds on the shot clock like they like to do, they spent the first 5 seconds trying to figure out how to get Halliburton the ball. That really slowed the pace, and then when the ball didn't get to Halliburton, the Knicks forced Andrew Nembhard and TJ McConnell to make plays and decisions. Look, I'm not a genius, but if I was playing against the Indiana Pacers, my entire goal would be to make someone other than Tyrese Halliburton make decisions. Halliburton is one of the best of decision makers in the NBA. He's leading the playoffs in assist to turnover ratio. Whoever else has to make a decision for the Pacers, it's going to be a downgrade. Right? And Nembhard didn't make great decisions last night. It seemed like whoever held the ball outside of Tyrese Halliburton turned it over or did something stupid with it. Okay? Aaron Nesmith was bad. Miles Turner was bad. Like, the list just goes on, right, in terms of making decisions with the basketball. And look, that's why the Pacers had 18 turnovers, because Halliburton just didn't touch the ball enough. We're going to get into that more here in a minute, because right now we're talking about Halliburton and how his bad performance last night wasn't entirely his fault. I didn't think Rick Carlisle did a good job last night. The guys weren't ready to go. The effort was lacking, obviously. The Knicks came out and won in large part because the effort was better than the Pacers. On top of that, Carlisle didn't adjust to how the Knicks were defending Halliburton. When a guy's being denied the basketball, you have to find a way to exploit that. There's a counter to everything. Okay? Like there is. Right? And the way that you exploit that ball denial is backdoor cuts or setting screens off the ball for Halliburton. The Pacers didn't do either one of those things. And Tyrese Halliburton is a very capable off-ball offensive player. Just go back to when he was playing in Sacramento. He didn't have the ball in his hands a ton because the Kings opted to give the ball to De'Aaron Fox. And that's, a choice that you can make, I guess. But that's the thing. Carlisle and this staff seemed completely content to just let Halliburton stand on the wing opposite of where the ball was. And that's just not okay. Carlisle and his staff didn't do anything to get Halliburton freed up and to make plays. And look, if you listen to the show, I am not a blame the coach guy. I am not really a blame Rick Carlisle guy because I think Rick Carlisle is a really good coach. But, he should have done something to help Halliburton. With that being said, ultimately, the players are the ones on the court that have to make plays, and Halliburton is on the floor, and he very easily could have done some of those things himself. He could have cut willingly, and he didn't. He could have pushed off and just tried to get open. He didn't do that. He has to do a better job of working his way open if he's going to be denied the basketball, and he didn't. The Pacers go as Tyrese Halliburton goes, and he didn't get it going last night, right? And part of that is on him being too passive. Part of it is on what the Knicks did to defend him because you have to tip your cap to them. I thought that they had the best defensive game plan for Tyrese Halliburton than the Bucks, and that was their best defensive game plan for him in this series. And the last part of it is on Rick Carlisle, who just didn't adjust properly, right? So was Halliburton bad last night? Yes. Could he have been better? Yes. But is it entirely his fault? No, I don't think so. Also, Anthony Edwards has had a couple clunkers in the playoffs. Right. And when we look through the course of NBA history, young 20-somethings don't have playoff success. It just doesn't happen. The entire history of the NBA tells us that. Michael Jordan didn't win his first title till he was like 28. LeBron James didn't win his first title till he was like 27. Right. Like it's when guys get into their late 20s that they start to get over the hump and win championships because you have to go through the playoffs and earn your playoff scars in order to be able to win. I don't know why that is, but that's just the way that it works. Okay, like Michael Jordan in his early 20s developed his playoff scars playing against the Celtics and the Pistons and these guys, right? And Halliburton, this is his first playoff run ever. Ever. He's 24. Like, and on top of that, he's having to go to Madison Square Garden. Could you imagine being 24 years old, having to play basketball in Madison Square Garden and be the dude? I'm 24. I couldn't imagine having to do that. That's an incredibly difficult thing to have to do. So I'm not going to sit here and rip Halliburton because Rick Carlisle didn't do his job. The Knicks flat out did a really good job of defending him. And because the history of the NBA tells me that Tyrese Halliburton isn't supposed to win that game last night. Just like how Anthony Edwards wasn't supposed to beat the Nuggets last night, and he didn't. Right? The history of the NBA tells us this. So Halliburton stuff, whatever. I didn't think that he was the sole reason why he lost because the Pacers were just bad across the board last night. They were. Okay, even if Tyrese Halliburton had played a great game, it wouldn't have mattered with the way that the Pacers rebounded last night. They were awful on the glass. They gave up 20 offensive rebounds. Okay, and look, I was wrong about something yesterday. I'm more than willing to admit whenever I'm wrong. Okay, and I was extremely, extremely wrong last night on this whole four-guard lineup thing from the Knicks. I thought that the Knicks going small would tremendously help the Pacers control the glass, and it didn't. Okay, Hartenstein owned Miles Turner, right? While all the other Pacers stood around and watched the basketball come off the rim, all the Knicks players actually moved. Like there were too many moments where a shot would go up, the guys for the Pacers would just stand there and look, while all the other Knicks crashed the glass intensely. The Knicks just flat out hustled the Pacers the entire way. Rick Carlisle knows it, and he addressed this in his postgame comments. Here is Pacers head coach Rick Carlisle on why the Knicks out-rebounded them so badly last night.
Oh, yeah, it was box outs, for sure. Look, it's just the cold-blooded desire to go get the ball. To make contact with somebody and go get the ball. That's what it is. And We did not do it. And so paid a heavy price.
It's a cold-blooded desire to go get the ball. Those were the words from Rick Carlisle. And look, I've been critical of Carlisle throughout the series. I know fans have been more than critical of Rick Carlisle throughout the series. But if his players don't want to go rebound, I don't think that's exactly on him. Okay? The hustle from the Knicks allowed them to get 29 more shots than the Pacers last night. You aren't going to beat anybody if you give up 29 more shots. Halliburton could have scored 50 last night, and it wouldn't have mattered if the Knicks got 29 more shots like they did. Okay, and part of that was the 20 offensive rebounds that the Pacers gave up, and the other part of that was the fact that they turned the basketball over 18 times. That is 38 extra possessions that they just gave away due to a lack of effort, intensity, and decision-making. Right, and those are three things that can be controlled by the players on the court. Okay, a lack of effort, a lack of intensity, and a lack of decision-making. That's not a Rick Carlisle thing. That is a players on the court thing. And I thought after the game, look, full disclosure here, Halliburton did that thing that upsets me again. He wore his stupid hood after he lost. I just, if you lose a game, I just don't want to see somebody sitting at the podium sulking with their hood up on top of their head. You look like you don't want to be there. You look really defeated when you do that. And I hate that he did it. It really bothers me. But here is Halliburton on the Knicks defense and why they forced so many turnovers last night.
Yeah, they picked up a little different than they have all year. All series, I'm sorry. But I do think a lot of our turnovers were self-enforced, or we did it self-inflicted. My bad. But I do think that I got to watch the film to really see where we could be better there. Kudos to them. They had a great night. Good defensive team. They did what they're supposed to do. And now it's time for us to go home and do what we're supposed to do.
A lot of the turnovers were self-inflicted. Self-inflicted turnovers aren't going to win you games, especially big-time playoff games. Okay, come on now. If you turn the basketball over and you give up offensive rebounds, doesn't matter what your best player does, you're not winning that game. It's just not going to happen. It's just not. And on top of the lack of contributions from Tyrese Halliburton, on top of the lack of offensive rebounding, and on top of the number of turnovers that the Pacers committed, they also just couldn't stop Jalen Brunson last night. Okay? Amidst all the things that the Pacers could have controlled between their effort and their intensity and their decision-making, something that couldn't be controlled last night was Jalen Brunson. Okay? And I'm not going to wax poetic here about the Pacers' defense last night. But look, sometimes great players just have it going. Right, and I thought that Aaron Nesmith did a good job being physical with Brunson. Right, the two fouls early kind of made it tough for him to continue to defend him. That's why we saw Nembhard on him. But look, Brunson's just a great player. Okay, it didn't matter what the Pacers did. Brunson just found a way to score, and that's honestly been the story of this series. Okay, Brunson has consistently found a way to be the best player on the court. Right, while Tyrese Halliburton hasn't shown up in games 1 and games 5. Right, and when we look back on this series, next year, 2 years, a decade from now, that's what we're going to remember more than anything else. We're going to look back and we're going to be like, wow, Jalen Brunson just took Tyrese Halliburton to the woodshed, and that's why the Knicks won this series. We're going to remember that, and we're going to remember how the Knicks just crushed the Pacers on the glass. Okay? So, congrats to Brunson. He's had it going last night. Sometimes great players have games where you just aren't going to stop them. And that's what happened with Jalen Brunson last night. And you're crazy. You're crazy if you think that I'm not going to touch on my guy, Miles Turner, right? Because he wasn't great last night. He wasn't. But are we really surprised? Are we really surprised? I'm scrolling through the comment section here, and when I first started, everybody in here on the YouTube and on the Twitter live stream, it's pretty great. If you want to watch live, you can go to YouTube, search Indy Sports Ticket, and it'll pop up. Or if you go to X or Twitter, you can just search Ticket 1430, and it will pop up right there for you to watch. So there was a lot of talk in the comments when I first started this show about the lack of rebounding for Miles Turner. And you're right, Miles Turner didn't rebound very well. We aren't surprised by that. At this point, we know that Miles Turner is not, he's not a good rebounder. He's just not. And with that being said, I do think it was pretty evident last night that Miles Turner is competitive. I think it was evident last night that he wants to win, and I think that everybody could see that. Right? He was the only guy who came out in the third quarter and made a shot. He was the only guy who came out in the third quarter that felt like he actually had a sense of urgency. Okay, like Miles Turner was the only guy on the floor to start the second half that I felt like actually wanted to be there. So he comes out and hits 3 straight threes, and he's feeling himself. And he's like, "Let's go," because he alone cut the lead down to 7. Comes out first possession, hits a 3. Comes down on the defensive end, forces a miss, grabs the rebound, trails to play, hits another 3. The Knicks come back. They attack the rim again. Miles Turner goes up, block shot, grabs the rebound, gives it to a guard, trails to play, and hits another 3. He alone cut that Knicks lead down to 7. And I think that it said a lot about who Miles Turner is. He's a competitor, right? Like, he's not a great rebounder. Fine. Whatever. But he had stretches last night where he was impactful, but it just wasn't enough when your best player in Tyrese Halliburton doesn't play like a superstar, right? And people are going to react to the Miles Turner stuff and point to this game as to why he sucks and why the Pacers shouldn't pay him and all this different kind of stuff, even though he was the only spark of life that the Pacers had in the third quarter. Okay? He had a couple of blocks, could he have contested some more shots around the rim? Yes. But the issue is when he contested shots, the Knicks got the offensive rebound, right? We talk a lot about the Miles Turner rebounding stuff. I think a large part of why he doesn't pull down rebounds is because he's contesting the shot. It's not very often that the guy who contests the shot comes down with the rebound, right? And I thought that he was just put in a really tough spot of, if I contest this layup and they miss, then Hardenstein's probably going to grab the offensive rebound. And if I don't contest the layup, then they're probably going to make it. It's like, honestly, like what do you want him to do? Right? I thought that he rebounded the ball much better when he didn't try and block the shot. And when he went for the contest, Hardenstein and the Knicks got the rebound. Right? Like that, I think that's a really tough thing to balance, right? Especially when the Knicks are sending 5 guys to the glass while the Pacers are just standing around on the perimeter. Right? Like, and the rebounding stuff, like, it's not just on Miles Turner. Like, we're sitting around here acting like Pascal Siakam dominated the glass or Tyrese Halliburton had a big rebounding game or whatever. It's on everybody. Nobody on this Pacers team rebounded the ball very well. They didn't. You know, if the Pacers had crashed the glass better and contained the dribble better, then the Pacers wouldn't have gotten crushed on the boards or in the game as a whole. So we can sit here and we can point at Miles Turner and we can blame him and we can talk about the Legos and all these different things. But ultimately, I don't think this entire thing is on Miles Turner. I don't. Now, I was really hopeful that I was going to come in today and do a really positive show. I was like, hey, Pacers might win game 5. We can talk about that. And then we could talk about the Caitlin Clark debut, which honestly wasn't much better than how the Pacers played last night. I'll get into that when we come back here in about 4 minutes. What's going on? The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Wrapping up the show here. Pacers get thumped last night. That's mainly what I've been talking about, but that is not the only basketball news here in the great state of Indiana. No, IU did not sign another big transfer. Purdue has been pretty dormant during the transfer portal because of all those freshmen they have coming in. But no, rather, we're going to the WNBA. I got to be honest. When I started my sports talk journey 6 years ago, I never once thought that I would be on the air talking about the WNBA. I didn't. And then along comes Caitlin Clark, who took the world by storm at Iowa. Fox offered her $5 million to stay in college, or maybe it wasn't $5 million. It was a lot of money. It was. And she was like, nah, I want to go to Indianapolis, and I want to play for the Fever, and I want to play with Aaliyah Boston. And there's this moment that we were all very much waiting for. And it came last night. Caitlin Clark made her WNBA debut. It was rough. It was rough. It was really bad. There's no other way to put it. A lot of turnovers, didn't make a lot of shots, didn't have very many assists, but hey, she made all 6 of her free throws. So that's good. In 32 minutes, the greatest women's college basketball player ever, Caitlin Clark, was 5 of 15 from the floor, 4 of 11 from 3, which isn't bad, 6 of 6 from the free throw line, didn't have a rebound, only had 3 assists, 2 steals, which is nice. And here's the kicker. She had 10 turnovers. That's rough. 10 turnovers. That's not great. And I have to say, I'm surprised at the number being 10, right? Like, that is an incredible amount. Like, that's a lot of turnovers. That's really bad. Hard to be much worse than that. But look, like, this can't be that big of a surprise, right? Like, her game 1 struggles, because anytime you're going from college to pro in any sport, like, the adjustment period is real. Like, it's very, like, even for a guy like Victor Wembanyama this year, who I think is held in a pretty similar regard in terms of coming in with really high expectations, like Caitlin Clark has, it took him a while to make the adjustment. LeBron James, when he came into the league 22 years ago or whatever it was, it took him. Like, there was an adjustment period, right? Because, like, playing a sport at this professional level is like, that's hard. It's not a very easy thing to do. So I think we're going to continue to see Caitlin Clark struggle, especially early, as she just kind of gets familiar with the WNBA game, because it's different from college. The athletes are better. The coaches are better. I was going to say there's more people there, but that's not true. And so, like, it's going to be a slow development, right? Like, if you were expecting for Clark to come out last night and score, 30 points and hit 48% of her shots and dish out, like 7 assists, like, that's just not realistic. Just isn't. And so I think as time goes on, she will improve. She will get better, because that's just the way that things go, right? Like, people get better the longer that they do things, especially young people. All right, I watched like the first 30 minutes of the game, and it was pretty apparent that the Connecticut Sun, who are apparently one of the better WNBA teams, like, they just didn't want Caitlin Clark to get going. And that's something that she's going to be battling, is all these WNBA women have heard about Caitlin Clark and how great she is and all of these different things. And they're like, she's not that good, right? Because that's just the natural reaction that competitors have. And so, not worried about it. I'm sure that as the year goes on, the Fever will get better, and good old Caitlin Clark will emerge at some point, right? Like, she hit some tough threes last night. She just has to find a way to find a rhythm, and she just has to adjust to the speed of the game. 10 turnovers. That's just, geez, that's a lot. 10 turnovers. I can't. That's absurd. It's absurd. And yeah, I'm curious. Did you watch the Fever last night? Did you not watch the Fever last night? Let me know at tweet at us at Ticket1430 and let us know whether or not you watched the Indiana Fever play games last night or play their game last night. Jeez, what am I saying right now? Golly. So, yeah, Clark, not a great start. Just a rough basketball night in general for the state of Indiana last night. Good news, though. Tomorrow, I will not be opening the show with basketball. I cannot wait for tomorrow's show because tonight at 8 o'clock, the NFL schedule reveal is happening, right? We're going to be able to sit down. We're going to be able to look at who, like, we already know who the Colts are going to play, but we're going to figure out the order of which, like, it's really important. Where's the bye week? That matters. And I can't wait to sit down with my pen and paper and be like, okay, that's a win. That's a loss. That's a win. That's a win. That's a win. That game is going to make this other game tougher because this game was physical. I can't wait to do that. I'm excited for tomorrow. I'm going to go through the entire schedule. So tune in tomorrow at 11 for me to go through that. I know Dan is scheduled to have some people on to talk about the schedule and those things. Also tomorrow, Tony East is going to join me to talk more Pacers because usually he would have been on with me today, but he's on a plane right now back from New York City. So there's that whole aspect of it. I have to thank John Buzzard because I feel like whenever I say anything, John Buzzard just always has my back, right? It's the best. Talking about Miles Turner earlier and how I didn't think that the lack of rebounds was fully his fault because when he's contesting shots at the rim, it's just harder to get back and to grab the rebound unless you block the shot. So he was forcing misses, and the other Pacers players wouldn't grab rebounds. And shout out to John Buzzard, who says, the Knicks play a slashing style where it pulls Turner over to protect the rim, less rebounds. If/when there are more jump shots, he has to get after those. Totally agree with that. I will say he's developed more of an edge, and I think he has an edge. I think he's a pretty competitive guy. And I'm excited to see how he responds in Game 6. I'm excited to see how Tyrese Halliburton responds in Game 6. Rick Carlisle, do some coaching for me. If they deny him the ball, if they deny Tyrese Halliburton the ball, I need you to figure out a way to get him open because the Pacers offense is so much better when Tyrese Halliburton actually gets touches, right? Like, he's the best player on this team. Like, you can't have these really long stretches where Halliburton just doesn't touch the ball. And once again, like, part of that is Halliburton's fault. Part of that is Rick Carlisle's fault. And the other part of it is the Knicks just did a good job of scheming for Tyrese Halliburton, right? Like, that was my biggest takeaway last night, right? It was so apparent the youth of this Pacers team, especially in Tyrese Halliburton. Like, I feel like if, Halliburton was 28, right, and he played in 7 playoff series before, that he'd be fine. I think that he would know how to adjust to that. That is probably the first time in the NBA that Tyrese Halliburton has been denied the basketball, right? Like, the coaching and the way that you're played just really changes, especially from not only regular season to playoffs, but also just during the playoff series that you're in. So excited to see how the Pacers try to combat everything that the Knicks threw at them in Game 5. I like them in Game 6. I do. Okay, the Pacers haven't lost at home since March 18th. Game 6 is going to be on Friday night. I like the Pacers to come out, be more desperate, all those things. I think that they'll actually play with effort. That should help them a ton. Tomorrow at 11, I'm breaking down the Colts schedule, which comes out tonight at 8. Tony East is supposed to join me tomorrow, either at 11:20 or 11:40. Still working on that. And yeah, I'll probably talk a little bit more playoffs and those things. Can't wait. Tomorrow, going to be a great day. Next, noon to 3, going to be a great show, the Dan Dockett Show that is following me. Go to the App Store or the Google Play Store, download that Indie Sports Ticket app so you can stream Dan's show. We cannot put it on YouTube, sadly. But hopefully one day, that's going to do it here at The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Tune in tomorrow from 11 to noon for some more great takes. Talk to you guys tomorrow.